Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we're unpacking what is, without a doubt, a monumental shift in interactive entertainment. Look, we're officially leaving behind the era of static, pre-recorded game characters. We're crossing the threshold into this wild new age of dynamic, AI-driven living entities. It is a total revolution in how we play, so let's just jump right in. I want you to think about this for a second. Have you ever poured like 80 hours into saving an entire kingdom only to walk up to a shopkeeper and have them just repeat their one generic line? I mean, you could literally steal a diamond right off their counter, come back 3 days later, and they'll still cheerfully be like, "Welcome, traveler." It absolutely shatters the immersion, right? And honestly, that is the painful limit of the old dialogue tree systems we've been stuck with for decades.
So this contrast perfectly illustrates where we're heading. On one side, we have the old way, restrictive dialogue trees. Developers had to manually type out and record thousands of audio lines for literally every conceivable choice you might make. It was incredibly expensive, super restrictive, and at the end of the day, completely predictable. But on the other side, the 2026 reality. Generative conversations featuring dynamic facial animations, varying voice tones generated on the fly using text-to-speech, and this is the crazy part, actual episodic memory. These characters don't just talk to you, they remember you.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We're covering 1. The death of pre-scripted NPCs, 2. The anatomy of a generative brain, 3. The cost of true immersion, 4. Hallucinations and privacy risks, and 5. The era of emergent gameplay. Let's start right off with Section 1, Death of Pre-Scripted NPCs, or basically the end of the dialogue tree. The technological evolution here is pretty clear when you look back. Back in the 1980s, we just had basic state machines. Think of the ghosts in Pac-Man, right? Just running on simple if-else logic. Then, fast forward to 2006, Bethesda gave us Radiant AI in games like Oblivion and Skyrim. Characters finally had daily schedules, but still, no real long-term memory. By 2018, Red Dead Redemption 2 hit the absolute peak of complex branching. Just massive, massive amounts of manually recorded lines reacting to things like your honor or your clothing. But now, in 2026, we are at the dawn of generative agents. It's the complete, literal elimination of pre-recorded dialogue. Now, you might be wondering, does this mean writers are out of a job? Actually, not at all. But their roles have fundamentally changed. Dialogue writers are now what the industry is calling character prompt engineers. So instead of writing exact lines for a character to say, they craft this core system prompt. It's kind of like programming the soul of a character. They'll write something like, "You are a grumpy rebel blacksmith who absolutely despises wizards." And once that prompt is injected into the system, the AI takes the wheel. It organically generates millions of unique conversations on the fly that the original writer will literally never even hear. Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of a Generative Brain inside the Cognitive State Engine. The absolutely crucial component driving this intelligence is the vector database. This completely replaces those old, rigid, true-false quest markers we used to have. It acts as the actual memory of the NPC. It handles working memory, which retains the events from, say, the last 5 minutes of your gameplay. It handles episodic memory, which stores highly emotional or critical events, like, say, if you stole their favorite sword. And it handles semantic memory, which is the character's inherent knowledge of the game's overarching lore, the politics, the religion, the whole shebang. Just picture this. You're playing a cyberpunk RPG, and 3 days ago you threatened a local bartender with a shotgun. The moment you walk back into that bar, the vision system detects you. Instantly, the engine queries his vector database, retrieves the memory of that shotgun incident, and notes his high fear level. It then injects a prompt telling the AI to act terrified but defensive. The local language model outputs the exact dialogue, the text-to-speech engine applies a trembling voice filter, and the animation engine actually crosses the character's arms. All of that dynamic processing, it happens in under 2 seconds. It's unreal. Okay, let's look at Section 3, the cost of true immersion, navigating the 2026 hardware realities. You have to understand, the leap from legacy NPCs to generative NPCs is massive across the board. We're going from simple, rigid Boolean logic straight to context-aware vector databases. We're shifting from studio actors doing handcrafted animations to dynamic text-to-speech with metahuman auto-syncing. But there is a catch, the computational cost. We've gone from the very low cost of simply retrieving an audio file to incredibly high processing demands.
And the reason that cost is so high is pretty straightforward. Running a local language model while simultaneously rendering 4K graphics at 60 frames per second can practically melt a standard processor. This is exactly why older 8th and 9th generation consoles, like the base PS5, severely struggle with this architecture. To make this work without totally destroying your frame rate, the 2026 industry relies heavily on dedicated neural processing units, or NPUs. Those NPUs offload that massive AI strain right off your GPU. But honestly, when you do have the right hardware, the achievements are unparalleled. We achieve infinite replayability. Literally, no two players will ever experience the exact same narrative journey. We get environmental awareness, meaning an NPC will actually comment dynamically if you walk into a room with a drawn weapon or bloody clothes. And, remarkably, you get a reduced storage footprint. You don't need to download 50 gigabytes of pre-recorded audio files to your hard drive anymore because the audio is synthesized locally, right there on your machine. Which brings us to Section 4, hallucinations and privacy risks, the hidden dangers of generative AI. So what is a developer's absolute worst nightmare? It's the critical threat of fourth wall breaks and lore-breaking hallucinations. In a linear narrative, everything has to adhere to the lore. But if the underlying system prompts aren't rigorously fine-tuned, a medieval knight might suddenly respond to a joke by talking about flying cars or the internet. Or even worse, they might accidentally spoil the game's ending by hallucinating facts that your character isn't even supposed to know yet. So how is the industry fighting this? Well, studios are using secondary filter layers to basically scrutinize the AI's output and catch forbidden, out-of-universe words before the audio is ever even generated. There are also embedded toxicity filters to stop the AI from learning abusive behavior from players, preventing what's known as data contamination. And, most importantly for you, everything relies on local on-device processing. Zero voice data ever leaves your PC or console, which guarantees your microphone privacy isn't breached. And finally, Section 5, the era of emergent gameplay, unscripted freedom and psychological realism. When this system works flawlessly, the result is sheer unscripted freedom. Players are discovering entirely undocumented ways to complete missions. Imagine you're playing a stealth level, right? Instead of spending 20 minutes hunting for a physical key, you can just use your actual microphone to lie to a guard. You can literally tell him his wife is in danger and he needs to run home right now. If the AI's reasoning system accepts your logic, he abandons his post. You bypassed a puzzle using pure conversation. Which brings us to this incredibly poignant insight. At the 2026 Engine Showcase, Hideo Kojima said, "Our greatest achievement in this generation is not photorealism, it's psychological realism." And honestly, that is exactly what you should take away from this explainer. When a player realizes that insulting a beggar today means that beggar will snitch to the city guards tomorrow, memory becomes the ultimate tool for immersion. Your entire playstyle shifts from being a reckless gamer to a cautious, functioning citizen of that world. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Knowing that your actions, your choices, and even your words permanently imprint on the memory databases of these characters, how are you going to treat digital entities moving forward? Will you still treat them as just lines of code, or will you engage with them as living parts of a breathing world? It's a fascinating paradigm shift, and it completely changes the way we play. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this sparked your curiosity about the incredible future of gaming.